Tomorrow will be 3 weeks since Attorney General William Barr got the Mueller report and still hasn't released it. In that time, he has made clear that he has zero intention of giving Mueller's report to Congress. The legal precedent here is that Congress gets everything, even if some stuff has to be cut out for public release. But Trump's newly appointed Attorney General, William Barr, is instead insisting that he's going to cut stuff out of the report, even from the version that goes to Congress. His latest promise, there have been a few, but his latest promise is that he will release both to the public and to Congress a censored version, redacted version, next week, hopefully. So who knows? Kind of making it up as he goes along. Today, though, the Attorney General appears to be trying to clean up from his latest accidental oops, I didn't really mean that moment, which came when he thought about it on the spot. You could actually see the wheels turning, and decided to declare while testifying before Congress that it was his personal belief that U.S. law enforcement was spying on the Trump campaign in 2016.
I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It's a big deal.
So you're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred?
I don't, I guess you could, I think spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur.
Yes, I think spying did occur, and it's a big deal. That, right? We all agree? Is that weird that I said that? Did I say something happened when it didn't actually happen? I could have been sure that I've heard that there was like spying, and we all agree. Within moments of saying he was setting up a team to investigate the spying that he believes occurred against the Trump campaign, which is a big deal, the Attorney General decided maybe try to take that back.
I've said I'm reviewing this. I haven't set up a team yet. This is not launching an investigation of the FBI.
Do you want to rephrase what you're doing?
You know, unauthorized surveillance. I want to make sure there was no unauthorized surveillance.
You've indicated that there's the possibility that unauthorized surveillance or spying occurred.
Did you say that I said that it occurred? And I believe there is a basis for my concern, but I'm not going to discuss the basis. Mr. Chairman, could I just add one point of clarification? Please. That I just want to make it clear, thinking back on all the different colloquies here, that I am not saying that improper surveillance occurred. I'm saying that I am concerned about it and looking into it. That's all.
Please, a point of clarification, because what I have been saying up until now was it's no longer operative. That cleanup job about his spying comments was an amazing thing over the course of a not very long hearing. It continued into today. After the testimony, a person familiar with Barr's thinking told the Washington Post, quote, he was not trying to provide conservatives with rhetorical red meat and was using the word spying in a technical sense of collecting intelligence. It's not what he said at all. That's another explanation. Now today, more sources familiar with Barr's thinking tell NBC News that actually Barr doesn't see much of a semantic difference between spying and surveillance, and he's more invested in whether the FBI followed proper procedures in launching the Trump-Russia investigation. Loose translation, it's dark, it's hard to see the light switch. Trying to make sure it's off, but it's... The longer we wait for the Robert Mueller report, the more it is clear that the newly appointed Attorney General is absolutely making it up as he goes along. It is almost entertaining to watch, but only almost.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.